Dracula Blood Hunt Issue 1 largely does two things. It brings Dracula into this conflict, and it brings Blade's daughter, Brielle Brooks, into it as well. Like her father before her, Brielle is basically half vampire. She gets vampire-based superpowers, but only at night. She has had some hand-to-hand combat training, but she ain't Shang-Chi or Blade or anything like that. I'm saying that she can handle herself in a fight, but if she had to fight Dracula at some point, she ain't winning that fight. She's good, but she ain't great yet. The first half of this book is focused on Dracula. We see him don his battle armor and get a report on the worldwide attack. It seems like Dracula knew that there was unrest in the vampire diaspora, but he hadn't acted on it yet. Anyways, he ends up teleporting to Brielle's location, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, after the sun gets blocked. They then size each other up, and Dracula pitches a team up. They can save the world, but only if they work together. Brielle is suspicious of this, because he's Dracula, but she also knows that her dad, Blade, the vampire hunter, can handle this guy if things get rough, right? They teleport to New York City, and then the issue ends. Yeah, my name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown's coverage of Blood Hunt Episode 4, Blade's Daughter plus Dracula equals Save the World? Yes, this issue was particularly light. Let's get into why. Author Danny Lore is largely doing a lot of stage setting here in the first issue. They are establishing who Dracula is, how he handles ruling the vampires, and it is what they called indifference. He wants all of the traitors to die immediately, regardless of why they have chosen to portray him. For Dracula, it doesn't matter if these vampires have a legitimate complaint with his form of rule, they are now the enemy. When his informant finishes giving her report, he actually has her killed, and her blood is then used to power the spell that teleports him to Atlanta. Lore is emphasizing Dracula's indifference here. Anyone who is not him is a tool to be used and expended. And I would argue that that doesn't bode well for Brielle in their upcoming alliance. This sets up an obvious tension between the two that Brielle doesn't know, but as audience members, we know. We also see the return of Dracula's battle armor, and boy, was this a point of contention when it debuted. This is another holdover from the Curse of the Mutants event that happened in the X-Men comics. When this armor debuted, fans reacted to it pretty hard, hating absolutely everything about it. Many people complained that it looked like something that an action figure would wear. Many complained that it didn't make sense for Dracula to have armor at all. After all, classically, Dracula is a dude in a black suit with a cape. He is several hundreds of years old, he has survived countless combats, and he's never had battle armor before. Why would he start wearing it now? But I have to admit that I think the basic design of the armor looks cool. And one of my friends saw it for the first time during this event, and he loved it. He said, quote, it looks like something out of a video game. And I remember correctly, one of the complaints that I saw was a lot of people being like, this looks like a Mortal Kombat character, not Marvel's Dracula. So, different strokes for different folks. And even if you don't like the basic design of the armor, Dracula is walking into a vampiric war zone that is being fought by allies that he would traditionally view as his enemies, all of the superheroes. So it makes sense that he would take some precautions going into the field, right? I think this is really smart, even if you don't like the look of the armor. The Brielle half of the book basically does the same work as Dracula's. It introduces us to Brielle, her two friends, and her basic status quo. That she's a high schooler. She kills vampires on the side, but she is a student first. Unlike her father, Blade, who has devoted his life to warring on vampires and the supernatural, Brielle is, for the most part, pretty normal. Until the sun goes black, and Brielle's vampire powers kick in like a mother. She accidentally rips off the door to her friend's car. That's how sudden her power boost is. Vampires descend on the teens, and Brielle moves to defend them. And she's doing okay at it, until Dracula shows up, and he just obliterates these rogue vampires. Brielle has a line in there about how insanely powerful Dracula is when compared to her father. So again, lore is doing some level setting here. Brielle is good, her dad is better, and Dracula is better than he is. Dracula then pitches her the basic idea of the team-up, and I don't know on that one. If my father's sworn greatest enemy and Lord of the Vampires showed up on my doorstep promising an alliance to save the world, I would be incredibly skeptical about this. I've never saved the world before. We have Avengers for that, after all. Go team up with those guys. And Dracula doesn't even tell Brielle the details of what his plan is. He just says, hey, we need to team up. I suppose that's the wrong accent for Drag. It should be more like, hey, we need to team up, and you can totally trust me not to betray you. But, like, he's flooping Dracula. I wouldn't trust him to save my life. If he was going to save your life, he would do it by biting your neck and turning you into a vampire. And then you'd be like, no, I'm a vampire. And he'd be like, yes, but you're still alive. Ah, ha, ha. I'm so trixies. So I do think that this bit of the story stretches believability a little bit. But given that Blade appears to be the main bad guy in Bloodhunt, I would assume that Brielle, who is his daughter, is going to play a rather important role in all of this, so I did feel like I had to at least check this first issue out. The biggest honest complaint that I have about this particular issue is how utterly boring I found it to be. Unlike my unfamiliarity with the Strange Academy kids, I am absolutely educated on Dracula and Brielle. While I'm not like a close follower of Dracula because he hasn't shown up in a lot of books, I am aware, and I've been buying the larger part of the vampire narrative of the Marvel Universe. I did buy the Bloodline miniseries that introduced Brielle. I don't personally need this level of catch-up and level setting. I really wanted to get into the meat of this story and these characters, right? So for me personally, this was uninteresting and slow, but I also, clearly I spent enough time thinking about this, I understand that author Danny Lore is setting things up for the readers, introducing all of the necessary pieces of their characters and their powers and what they can do, and now is when we'll start to see things happen moving forward. This is the danger of writing for a whole new audience, but at least we know everything we need to know going into this story. I cannot say the same for Strange Academy, and what I would have given for its author to take this slower, more deliberate approach and introduce some more characters, set some more personalities, demonstrate some more powers. I would also bet that Dracula is planning to use Brielle as a hostage against Blade at some point. Blade, of course, won't give a crap because he's not Blade or whatever, which is when we'll get the big reveal of who is controlling him or who is impersonating, and things will be much worse than Dracula feared, I bet. Thank you for joining me on Breakdown's coverage of Bloodhunt. Our next episode will be covering Avengers issue 13, which sees Captain America respond to the vampire threat. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.